Hello and a warm welcome back to the Pitchside podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the BSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these podcast episodes, which you can listen to on Spotify, Google Podcasts or any other platform. Follow us on social media. I'm at Side BSP on Twitter, Pitchside Pod on Instagram. And of course, join us and help us on the way to our first K. Let's reach that milestone before the Euros. And welcome to episode 126 and another weekend preview. You're welcome. It is a jam-packed weekend in the European elite football. Of course, there's just a lot to talk about, but we cannot start without talking about the Europa League quarterfinals that were concluded yesterday, and we have our semifinals set. It is going to be Manchester United versus Roma and Villareal versus Arsenal after every single one of those four confirmed their qualification yesterday. Manchester United by doubling their win against Granada 2-0. Edinson Cavani scoring early on in the game in the 6th minute by the test of Paul Pogba, and Jesus Vallejo managed to make it 2-0 for Man United by adding an own goal from his side. Granada were really good, I thought. In this game, they were better than the first leg, but it was United. The quality was too much for them, and they were outmatched really by Man United's quality up front. 2-0 it was. There was a lot of rotation, of course. De Gea was a starter. He's becoming the second goalkeeper now for Man United, which might be a problem and an issue, at least according to reports from the Mancunian house. Roma sweated so hard to get through against Ajax. Of course, Ryan Brobby managed to make it 1-0 for Ajax inside 49 minutes, and we all thought, you know what, Ajax are going to be going through indeed. Dusan Tadic scored a goal in the 57th minute, but it was chalked off, and that was, I think, the let-off that Roma needed to qualify. Edin Dzeko managed to make it 1-1, meaning that the card to the semi-final is Roma's, and they're going to be facing, of course, as I mentioned, Manchester United. Slavia Praha, who eliminated Rangers and eliminated Leicester City, didn't have the same luck against Arsenal, and they were smashed 4-0 by the Gunners, 3-0 inside 23 minutes in the first half. Nicolas Pepe scoring in the 18th minute, and Alexander Lacazette in the 21st minute from the spot, and Bukayo Saka in the 24th minute scoring the third goal, and that goal came after a goal that was cancelled for Emil Smith-Rowe in the 17th minute. It was quite the brilliant performance really from Arsenal in the first half. The second half was a little bit less better, but you know, it is normal when you're leading 3-0 in these kind of situations. Alexander Lacazette scored the fourth goal in the 77th minute. I think it was a perfect performance for Arsenal, and they don't get a lot of those in this season to qualify to the semi-final and to face the side of their former coach Unay Emery in Villareal, who doubled down on their victory against Dinamo Zagreb themselves 2-1. The goals coming in from Paco Alcacer and Gerard Moreno, while Mislav Orsic scored the sole goal for Dinamo Zagreb. It's going to be quite an interesting ties. Again, the storylines are a lot here. Of course, there's Mkhitaryan with Roma, who used to play for Man United. There's Chris Smalling for Roma as well, who used to play for Man United, but albeit injured. There's, of course, the Unai Emery story, and that is going to be just the dominating, I think, headline for this game between Villareal and Arsenal. Of course, those semi-finals are said to be taking place on the 28th of April, and that is, of course, in a couple of weeks' time. Enough of that now, and let's start talking about the proper weekend preview. And that weekend preview, of course, we're going to be kicking things off with the FA Cup, and there's, of course, the semi-final of that competition taking place on the during the weekend, of course, with two games that, you know, clearly one is bigger than the other, that is for sure. And, of course, we're talking here about the game between Chelsea and Manchester City in said competition, of course, the first of the two semi-finals. And, you know, it's all to think about the improvements of the two sides since the last time they met, which was in the league, and that was, I think, way back in late November for for Chelsea and for Manchester City. Of course, the last time they met, it was like in early January this season between Chelsea and Man City. Of course, it was a 3-1 thrashing from Manchester City. It was a pretty decisive win for Man City at the time, of course, 3-0 in the first half, and it was a complete rout, it looked like. Lampard, of course, was sacked afterwards, and Tommy Tuchel was brought in for the dance, and things have changed ever since for Chelsea. They just reached the semi-final of the Champions League, albeit with a loss against Porto, and, they improved a lot again under Tuchel. They improved a lot defensively. Their side have become more compact. They know how to defend a little bit better now, and they sort of understand the way that they want to play under Tommy Tuchel. They don't have any more problems in transitioning, and again, I think the only big problem for them is to find an identifiable striker, to find someone who can put the ball in the back of the net. Timo Werner isn't exactly cutting it. 29 appearances and 5 goals this season isn't exactly a great number, albeit he has 9 assists to his name, which is, decent at the very least. As for Man City, it's of course a step towards the quadruple. They would try and look at as, somewhat of a great, a great time to stomp their authority over the next couple of games they have, because they have such a rough spell of games. They have, of course, as I mentioned, this game against Chelsea, then they have the game against Aston Villa in the league, and then, of course, at Tottenham in the EFL Cup final. Then they have PSG home and away, between those Crystal Palace in the league. So they will have quite the easy excuse and argument for the rotation of their squad. I mean, Pep Guardiola has been doing this perfectly over the course of the season so far, rotating the squad, rotating the side, and swapping and trying to putting pieces into place for the rest of the season. Of course, this is the toughest spell, I would say, for Man City this season, and if they want to make it as, a side to win the quadruple and to achieve something that is going to be quite unprecedented and maybe unachievable in English football, they would have to pass these tests, of course, in the next couple of weeks for them. Again, they come a long way from the last time they met. At least Chelsea come a long way from the last time they met, because Man City, I think, are the same since the last time they met. But at Chelsea, for them, they come a long way. They, I think, I'm not going to say transformed, because I don't say 100% perfect at the moment, but, I mean, they improved a lot. Let's say they improved a lot. And it's going to be interesting to see how Chelsea are going to be approaching this one. How Tommy Tuchel is going to be approaching this one. Is he going to be looking to defend, to sit deep, to see how City are going to be playing and they're going to be managing their game? Or is going to go at them and have a go at them and try to show everyone that he has what he can say in terms of offensive football as well? But I really doubt he will do that. In my opinion, it sounds like he will be pretty conservative, but depending on the side that they're going to be facing against City, because Man City also may rest a couple of players, may start with the strongest squad for this one and rest a couple of players for the league, which seems pretty done and dusted at the moment, as I mentioned, and they don't have the worries about the league as much, so they will play to win all the trophies they can, the FA Cup, the EFL Cup, and of course, the biggest one of them, the Champions League. Hopefully we see an entertaining game, and of course it will be great to see who's going to be going through from those two. The other semi-final, of course, is going to be Southampton versus Leicester City, and we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. Of course, we're going to be leaving the second semi-final of the FA Cup and, of course, La Liga to talk about them in tomorrow, added to the issues we're going to have on the magazine episode, hopefully. Carrying on in the English theme, and let's move on to the Premier League from the FA Cup, of course, and the kickoff of round 32 of the Premier League. It kicks off today with a big game, quite a big encounter between Everton and Tottenham. Of course, Everton and Tottenham are neck and neck on the table. Tottenham with 49 points at 7th, and Everton with 48, of course. Still missing a couple of, games for Everton. They're still pretty much involved in the top 4 discussion, albeit, it looks a little bit harder to achieve this time. As for Tottenham, coming off the back of a, certainly disappointing loss, at the very least, against Manchester United last weekend, 3-1 at their own stadium, maybe they will try and look to improve That's what I want to say. Mourinho, of course, came after the game attacking Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, of course, deflecting, deflecting what he thinks of his game and of the performance of his side, deflecting him, talking about how Mourinho commented on the way Son fell during the goal that was disallowed for that game and whatever. It's a big mess. It's a big sort of story to try and cover the performance of his side, as usual for Mourinho. And I think it reached a point for Mourinho where, he just can't, you just can't like him anymore for his statements. I mean, this was funny back when, this was like, when he was successful with Chelsea, when he was successful with Inter Milan, when he was successful with Real Madrid, this was lovely to see. And to a certain extent, even with Man United, he was a bit successful, and this was lovely to see. But with Tottenham this season, it's his second season with Tottenham, and it's quite the failure, to be fair. They're out of the FA Cup already, and guess against who? It's against Everton, their opponents on the diet. And of course, the last game before that in the league, they lost to Everton in the first game. Since then, they improved, and funny the perception of Tottenham, how the perception of Tottenham and Everton has changed over the course of the season since that first game. Since that first game, we thought, okay, Everton are going to be title challengers and all of that. That was in the first weekend of the league. And we said, okay, Tottenham may not amount to much. Then Tottenham became top of the table, and we thought, okay, they might compete for the league and might win the league. And then we said, you know what, Everton, top 4 material, that's fine for them. And they dipped and ebbed and flowed in form, and they changed over the course of the season. And Tottenham, had a good streak of form, a good streak of results where they picked up points by defending, by being lethal on the counter-attack, and Kane and Son had an incredible season overall, and then they just dipped in form, and even Kane and Son are not performing that good anymore, which should be, I think, quite a dilemma for Jose Mourinho to sort of figure out. There's also the problem of Gareth Bale, who came in. They waited on him to have some good performances, and when he had good performances, Tottenham had bad results overall. And it is incredibly interesting to see how Tottenham are going to be pursuing the rest of the season. They still again involved in top 4 conversation, but to which extent they should be, I talked about as favourites to get into that last 4 spot, because in my opinion, I can see one of them, getting close, but not quite to the European spot. I still am going to keep the top 4 that I predicted for myself. I'm not going to tell it until the end of this round, at the very least. As far as Everton are concerned, again, for a season where everybody expected them to be title contenders, they're quite below that level. Maybe they will need another season with Ancelotti. A European place this season would be quite the achievement, considering that they still, have some games to play. They still, have a good amount of fixtures to play for Everton. I think they have some decent amount of encounters to play for this season. Of course, after this game against Tottenham, they face another side from North London in Arsenal, so that is quite interesting as well. So the games for Everton this season are going to be quite tough. The rest of them. So if they want to get a top 4, they need to pick up points. They need to win against Tottenham. Simply winning, not drawing. Drawing is not going to cut it. They simply need to win it if they want to play for the top 4 spots. On Saturday for the Premier League, of course, Newcastle United face West Ham United. West Ham, another ambitious side for the top 4 as well. Southampton versus Crystal Palace. Wolves versus Sheffield United. Arsenal versus Fulham in a London derby. That kicks off the action on Sunday. Man United versus Burnley. Leeds United versus Liverpool. That should be an interesting tie on Monday. On Tuesday, it is Chelsea and Brighton Hove Albion. Of course, Chelsea coming off at the back of the semi-final of the FA Cup. Aston Villa versus City on Wednesday, with Aston Villa, with Man City themselves coming off the back of the FA Cup semi-final. And then you have Leicester City versus West Bromwich Albion on Thursday to finish off the round 32 of the Premier League. To Spain now, but not with La Liga. As we mentioned, La Liga is going to be, taking a rest on Saturday, of course. All the games are going to be played on Sunday, because on Saturday it will be the Copa del Rey Final. It is Atletico Bilbao versus Barcelona in one single game. Barcelona, out of the bat, I think Barcelona need this one. They really do need this one to sort of stamp their approval of the season that they've been having, because everybody thought at the start of the season, I mean, we don't need to mention it a lot, but everybody thought, you know what, Barcelona are not going to be doing it. They're just going to be not going to be doing it. It will be one of the worst seasons they will have. And, you know, with Messi potentially leaving the club, it would have been a disaster if they finished, you know, sort of below the top 4 or below the top 3, let's say, in La Liga without the title. But here we are in April, and we're talking about Barcelona could potentially win a double. I mean, they could win here against Athletic Bilbao, albeit it's going to be a traumatic game for them because Athletic Bilbao beat them in the Super Cup. You know, to win the Super Cup in the final, of course. And, you know, they could still really eliminate them here and win the trophy. So it could be quite the experience for Barcelona if they lose against Athletic Bilbao. But I think they came a long way as well from there. I mean, were I think the early days of the experience of the 3 at the back kind of thing for Koeman, and you know, from that point I think they improved a lot. They had a good result in the league. They had some good streak in the league until they were beaten by Real Madrid in El Clasico. You think that, you know, you think that Barcelona have the advantage in this one more than they did in the Super Cup. Again, the fact is, they really, they defeated Athletic Bilbao in the league just a couple of weeks later from that defeat in the Super Cup, so that should be serving them quite well as well. They defeated them, I mean, in the 2 games of the league this season. You know, that they played 3-2 away from home in the San Mamés and, you know, 2-1 in the Camp Nou, so they don't have an issue in beating them. But the Super Cup game, I mean, had some weird sort of circumstances to it. Of course, the red card for Messi in the extra time and all of that. The defensive mistakes that, you know, saw them leading 2-1 only to lose the lead late on in the game and then lose the whole game in extra time. I mean, it was quite a weird situation for Barcelona. But again, as far as this game is concerned, it is going to be a stamp of approval, I think, for Koeman, and a stamp of a good season. I mean, it's going to be considered a successful season if they only win the Copa del Rey and finish, you know, top 3 in La Liga, which absolutely surely they will do. But they could still win the league. They could still make a final push to win the league. They could still make a final push to win the Copa del Rey, so they could end up winning the double, which is going to be quite the success coming in from the start of the season, where everybody was expecting them to fail. Everybody's expecting them to, you know, to drop, I mean, even to the Europa League levels. Like, yes, they're out of the Champions League, and, you know, understandably so, and it could have been different against PSG away from home to Paris, but it is going to be quite an interesting situation again for Barcelona, because if they win the Copa del Rey, that might jolt their chances of winning the league. That might just give them a little bit extra, just you know, extra motivation in order to play the next games that they have in the league. Of course, but you know, Barcelona, they have they have Getafe to play next in the league, and then of course they have the reverse, and they have a fixture that is going to be playing in hand against Granada in the league, of course, from the round 33 that will be played this week instead for the league. So the conclusion is obviously that Barcelona, I think, need to win it. I mean, need to win it more than Athletic Bilbao did. Athletic Bilbao, I mean, from out of nowhere as well, winning a trophy for them is going to be, you know, quite an achievement, because it's going to get them into some European spots for next season. So that's going to be quite interesting as well to see. But for me, I think Barcelona need to win it. If they do, it's going to be considered a successful season, at least for Koeman, validating his effort at least since the turn of the year with the club, the way they changed the formation, the way he found his groove, found the system to play into, and all of that. And it's going to be quite an interesting situation to see how Koeman is going to be approaching this one again, with all the PTSD involved from the Super Cup for Barcelona. From Spain, let's move on to Germany and the Bundesliga, and of course the biggest focus is going to be on the 2 sides that were eliminated from the Champions League, say Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund, of course, were eliminated from the quarterfinal of that competition. But of course, the round kicks off with round 29 of the Bundesliga kicks off with RB Leipzig versus Hoffenheim on Friday. Quite the money match between those two sides. If you get the idea about these two clubs, then you understand what I mean. Then Union Berlin, Stuttgart on Saturday. Borussia Mönchengladbach, Eintracht Frankfurt as well to kick off. Quite an interesting one for Frankfurt, of course, looking to the for the top four. Augsburg versus Arminia Bielefeld, Freiburg versus Schalke, VfB Wolfsburg versus Bayern Munich, and Bayer Leverkusen versus Scotland. That's on Saturday. And on Sunday, Borussia Dortmund versus Werder Bremen, and Mainz facing Hertha Berlin. Again, the two biggest points I think from this one is the Bayern, the Bayern games, as well as the Borussia Dortmund game. I mean, Bayern, after the Champions League and after the Champions League exit, there's a lot of problems that are going to be creeping out of the top. The whole talk about Hansi Flick, the whole talk about, Salihamidzic, who's going to leave first from the two. Is Flick going to be replaced by Julian Nagelsmann? Nagelsmann denied that. There was no talks held between him and the club or his agents. Salihamidzic, not going public about this at the very least, but Flick, seems to be so stressed about it. The last press conference against Union Berlin seemed to suggest that he was very tense about it. He didn't want to answer the question whether he was the coach next season. If there wasn't a problem in Bayern Munich, they wouldn't be sweating that. They wouldn't be sweating, this sort of question. They would completely ignore it, and they would just talk about something else, and they would not try to mention it because it's something trivial. But every outlet in Germany is reporting that Hansi Flick is going to be leaving, is reporting that Julian Nagelsmann is supposed to be the next coach and all of that, and the reports are just conflicting, and I think adding more tension to an already tense week for Bayern after being exiting from the Champions League, of course. And again, I think the main reason for the exit is still injuries, because had they had Lever, had they had Gnabry, had Goretzka been 100% fit, it would have been a completely different game, I would say, from Bayern Munich. But, they need to turn the page now and focus on the task in hand, facing Wolfsburg, a side that is having a great season so far. They are third in the Bundesliga table, 11 points behind them, and 6 behind RB Leipzig. They, of course, they had a draw in the, Bayern Munich defeated them. Hardly defeated them in the first game they had in the league, 2-1, of course, at the draw against Werder Bremen. I mistook that. Bayern Munich, need to win. I mean, they simply need to win. I mean, it doesn't matter really. They still have a couple of injuries, of course. Alphonso Davies is going to be returning after serving his 2-match ban. And, you have the opportunity for Bayern Munich to really return on the league grind and just, grind out results until the end of the season, of course. You're still going to be missing Lewandowski as well for a couple of games, Gnabry as well, so it might not be as easy as it sounds, and definitely against a side like Wolfsburg, who are one of the strongest sides in the Bundesliga defensively, you might struggle really. They're the second strongest defense in the Bundesliga, and, it's going to be a struggle that is going to be unnecessary probably for Bayern Munich to have, they don't need to have. And, maybe they shouldn't care about the league that all, because it's about the only title that they would get this season, because the others are really linked to the Champions League. When you get the Champions League, get the Super Cup, European Super Cup, and then the Club World Cup and all of that. So, there's a potential that Bayern Munich could end up the season with only one trophy in their hands, which is going to be disastrous comparatively to last season's 6-2 and all of that. Moving on to the other big game also in this one is Borussia Dortmund versus Werder Bremen. And again, after a European exit, they would look to bounce back. And, they still have some sort of hope in the top four, but that is going to be depending on the results of particularly Eintracht Frankfurt above them. With 7 points. When 7 points is the closest gap you have for the top four, you really don't have a lot of hope in you. And of course, with Marco Rose coming in the next season, they're probably just, going to be finishing the season, starting a new project, accepting the fact that they will be in the Europa League next season, just trying to keep that spot and keep hold of that European spot. and see how things are going to be going for the rest of the season for them until the start of the new project under the new manager. But the game itself isn't easy against Werder Bremen for Borussia Dortmund. The last time they faced them, of course, they defeated them 2-1, and they needed to turn things around in that game, if anybody forgot, to win that one. So it's going to be quite a tough job for Borussia Dortmund against a side like Werder Bremen, and their aspiration for top four should be kept alive with the wins in the next couple of games. But of course, again, it depends all on the results of these sides above them, and in particular Eintracht Frankfurt, if they will make it into a top four for the Bundesliga. And rounding up our weekend preview, we move on and finish with Serie A, of course. We have some tasty fixtures in Serie A, by the way. It is going to be really interesting to see how the Serie A how the Serie A fixtures are going to be shaping up this weekend. In particular, two biggest stars are coming on Sunday, of course. But it kicks off on Saturday with Crotone facing Udinese, Sampdoria facing Hellas Verona, Sassuolo, Fiorentina, Cagliari, Parma. On Sunday, here come the big guns in Sunday. Milan kicks off against Genoa. It's quite an interesting one as well. Atalanta versus Juve. For the top four, really, that is a straight head-to-head for the top four. Of course, Atalanta managed to get a draw at Juventus in the first game, albeit they were the better side, really, and they should have won that game. Won the last two games, and a draw between the two sides, and this should be an interesting one as well. Atalanta on quite a decent form, as of late, aside from the European losses against Real Madrid, loss against Inter Milan. Or in between, they were winning their last 7 games straight in Serie A, and the last one against Fiorentina, 3-2, quite the hard victory as well to get for Atalanta. As far as Juventus are concerned, still woozy, still not exactly not the greatest of results that they have. The win against Napoli was important, I think, to keep their top 4 spots alive. Then another victory against Genoa. Before that, a draw in the derby of Turin that is not exactly likeable for Andrea Pirlo, who's still not finding his groove yet. Obviously, this season, I think the main idea is to just get into the Champions League, see what they're going to be doing in the Coppa Italia final, which is going to be playing against Atalanta again in a couple of weeks' time. So it would be quite interesting to see how they finish off the season and in which momentum they finish off the season, because the top 4 battle is still brewing in Italy and they could still lose the Champions League spot. But it just might be that this game might go a long way into defining where they're going to be finishing the season, because say they win, it will be 4 points behind Atalanta, and also it's going to depend on another big result in how the top 4 spots are going to be shaping up for Juventus this season, because that other game is Napoli versus Inter, of course. Bologna versus Spezia on Sunday as well. Before that, Lazio, Benevento, and Torino facing Roma in an interesting one as well for both sides. Torino and Roma had different ambitions, really, from both sides, as Napoli versus Inter, of course, closes down the show on Sunday. And again, it's a big game as far as the top 4 is concerned. Maybe not interesting for Inter in terms of the title, but for Napoli, it's all about the top 4. If they want to sneak into a top 4 Napoli this season, they must defeat Inter Milan, of course. And it's not exactly the undoable sort of task, because not so far ago they defeated them in the Coppa Italia last season and last year, but this season Inter had the upper hand in terms of the wins. They defeated them 1-0 in the first leg, and with a red card for Napoli. This one should be pretty different as well, because Napoli also picked up the form from there and from the slump at the start of the season. Only 1 loss in the last 10 games, which is the game against Juventus, of course, in the midweek last week. So definitely Inter are going to be looking to win this one to just get one step closer to the title. As far as Napoli are concerned, sneaking into a top 4 position must be linked with winning this one, and of course they're going to be licking their chops of a draw maybe between the two sides, so they could be joint 4th or joint 3rd with Juventus and Atalanta, depending on the result. And of course that would get them a big chance maybe into sneaking into 2nd Maybe they will finish even second, and they should be really ambitious to win this one in the Serie A. That's it from me for this episode. I was your boy, the HOD of the BSB. Like, share, comment on this video, of course, on YouTube version of the podcast, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes and all the content on the channel, including the podcast, of course. Listen to that on Spotify, Google Podcast, or any other platform. Follow us on social media, site BSB on Twitter, page on Instagram. And until next time, I'll be seeing you soon. Goodbye.